As culture continues to shift into a digital era, cinema closely follows. Just as VHS gave way to DVD, audiences continue to transition towards digital streaming and away from physical media. Despite how bleak this may sound to home cinema, there are some historical insights that paint a better picture as to what truly lies ahead. Rather than focus on my personal opinions, I want to emphasize what history has shown us, what other entertainment industries have experienced, and what these indicators mean in terms of expectations. Hello, cinema fans. I'm David, and welcome to Timeless Cinema Show. Before we get into what the future may offer us, let's start off by discussing recent events, followed by some notable events that led up to what we saw in 2023. For starters, 2023 was arguably a rough year for physical media. We saw Disney cease new physical media releases in Australia and New Zealand, with Guardians of the Galaxy 3 being their last release down under. This was followed by Walmart and Best Buy announcing they are decreasing and, in many cases, removing the DVD and Blu ray sections entirely. Based on what I've seen, it looks like Best Buy is proceeding with a complete removal, whereas Walmart's inventory is more or less stocked based on location. On the rental side of things, longtime running service Netflix DVD officially ceased in September 2023. Netflix had offered this service for more than 20 years at the time it was shuttered. Similar to Netflix, Redbox also closed down and announced a filing for bankruptcy in July 2024. Apparently, Redbox still owes money to various studios and their machines still sit dormant around the US. When it comes to recent physical media sales, Yuri Gutskin did a great job on the subject, which includes sales numbers for 4K Blu-ray, DVD, and standard Blu-ray. These findings are consistent with a downward trend in total sales across all formats, while also noting standard Blu-rays remain the platform with the most value, and both DVD and Blu-ray are doing better than 4K Blu-ray. Considered to be the future of physical media, 4K Blu ray is struggling and showing signs that it may be limited to a niche market. All this is happening while it remains the latest and greatest movie media format. Also, seeing DVDs perform better than 4K Blu ray is crazy since DVDs came out in 1996. DVDs are around 27 years old, with Blu rays at 17. 4K Blu ray has been on the market for 8 years, and time will only tell what the future of it looks like. But these are just some of the notable events from the last 2 years. What about the trends before 2023? Well, when we look deeper into the past, things actually look worse. Before 2023, we saw back in 2001 peer to peer piracy services explode online. This form of early piracy is often credited as being responsible for destroying much of the music industry's sales, which is an important parallel we'll look back to. In 2005, the film industry saw DVD sales hit their peak, reaching $16.3 billion dollars and 64% of the US market. It's worth noting that financial analysts at that time believed much of these sales were driven by VHS owners transitioning their collections towards DVD copies of movies they already owned. But just as DVDs saw their peak, 1 year later, the Blu ray format launches, and the Motion Picture Association of America states that movie piracy cost them around $6.1 billion. From 2008 to 2021, DVD sales dropped by roughly 86%. This means DVD sales were already declining before streaming services had even gained momentum. When the Blu-ray format released in 2006, it caused major disruptions to the industry as early competition from rival HD DVD split the market and came with a more expensive format to manufacture. To this day, DVDs are still vastly cheaper than their Blu-ray counterparts. If that doesn't sound bad enough, around 2009 to 2011, video games permanently became the number one form of home entertainment, completely overtaking music and movie sales combined, making video games the preeminent art form in homes around the world. Granted, video games did surpass movies back in 1982. Many analysts do believe a large reason for the early success of DVDs is due to sales and success of the PlayStation 2 and its built-in DVD playback. This allowed gamers to access movies as part of their entertainment library. By comparison, when the PS3 released, Blu-rays were fighting against HD DVDs, with Xbox backing the HD DVD format. When the PS3 launched, standalone Blu-ray players were also fairly expensive, which also didn't help the case for early adoption of Blu-ray. When it comes to 4K Blu-ray, this format didn't receive any support from gaming consoles until the Xbox One S in 2016, later followed by Xbox One X, PS5, and Xbox Series X. all of them years later. These facts do lend some credence to the possibility that consistent support from gaming consoles is vital to physical media sales. One thing in particular that's made gaming consoles useful for physical media is how they offer firmware updates to support newly added features, such as the addition of Dolby Atmos, DTS:X, and HDR support. When you take into account the rise of video games as the primary form of entertainment, combined with the cost of maintaining a physical movie collection, the rise of piracy, and the latent support from gaming consoles, it's easy to see how physical movie purchases are continuing to see a decline in sales. But this is only a statistical analysis via publicly available data. What about human culture? What shifts are we seeing playing a role in the DVD and Blu ray markets? Well, for starters, costs. Streaming services have become a cost effective method to access a large library on day one, and it's no surprise that Tubi has become the number one ad supported streaming service in 2024 with limited ads and a surprisingly good library. Additionally, streaming services are supported across many devices and don't require storage space in your home. Storage space, in particular, can be an issue when you have roommates or live in a small apartment. Streaming services also push out a steady stream of new releases at minimal cost, something useful to those looking for fresh content on a regular basis. One specific aspect I often hear discussed about streaming movies, though, is that most of the original content are not worth the price of a physical copy, but I'll get back to this point later. Another major factor for streaming customers is convenience. Being able to log in and stream a large library from your digital device is extremely convenient. Another interesting trend can be found when you look at the release strategies of major films today. After a movie hits theaters, the next step is a digital first release. In some cases, there's even a simultaneous streaming or video on demand release alongside the theatrical launch. Following the digital release, a physical release sometimes takes place, which hinges on whether the movie is popular enough. We also have the harsh reality that piracy is generally considered to be culturally acceptable. I can easily do an entire special on piracy, but the short version is that despite the illegal nature of piracy, a majority of Americans pirate content at some point. As of 2023, piracy accounts for at least 24% of all internet traffic. That's billions of people using the internet and a lot of revenue lost to film studios. And I'm not even sure if that includes illegal streaming services, which brings up another good point. Box office bombs have become somewhat normalized. 10 of the worst years on record for total box office bombings happened in the last 11 years. When adjusted for inflation, the last 11 years had $8.6 billion in reported losses. 2016 had the worst year on record with $1.4 billion. 2022 had $932 million in losses, which is the most recent year we have complete records for. Only 2014 avoided any major box office bombs, at least according to available reporting. This brings me to a noticeable trend amongst discussions surrounding movies lately, specifically when it comes to what audiences consider to be a good movie. The definition of what we call good is changing. One person may not like horror, another person may have preferences towards romance. Preferences are nothing new. What is new, though, is the shrinking pool of people that believe a movie is good enough to warrant a purchase. Whether it's the cost of a movie ticket or a $20 Blu ray, audiences are less eager to pay for a single movie. Before the rise of streaming services and piracy, the general case was that when someone said a movie was good, this meant they were willing to pay good money to get their hands on a copy. From a cultural perspective, what makes something good is the general adoption of art by the overall populace. What's critical about this shift is how we are able to determine if a movie is a classic by its longevity and overall adoption by audiences, which is how we can sufficiently state that a movie is truly a classic. Until recently, box office bombs could eventually find their way to a larger audience after a bad run in theaters via successful physical release. Blade Runner is a great example of this. With streaming services, views typically spike at the time of launch and quickly die down, reducing long-term popularity with it. Which makes me wonder, are movies just not considered to be as good anymore by the general audience? Do audiences need sequels, spin-offs, and remakes to make them rewatch prior installments? Does the general audience not consider individual movies good enough to warrant the purchase on Blu-ray or DVD? Or has the convenience and cost of streaming driven audiences away from physical media? This brings me to an interesting point on cultural shifts. Until 2020, We were seeing new record highs with the number of US movie releases each year. 2018 had 873 releases, followed by 2019's 792 releases, more than double 2001's 355. It's worth discussing whether film release bloating may have occurred, creating an onslaught of underwhelming quality, further exacerbating the situation, which in turn drives physical media sales down more. Of course, the events of 2020 did have severe impacts to everyone around the world, many of which we're still feeling 4 years later. This does explain the massive decrease in US releases as well, as 2020 had 334 releases in the US, well below 2005's numbers. One last cultural shift is that viewing appetites are drifting towards short form video content, short form videos being between 2 and 20 minutes long. Videos by YouTube and social media stars are seen by more eyes today than the next big Disney release. This says a lot about where the future of cinema is going, as the popularity of leading platforms often become the foundation of where cinema goes next. If people prefer short form content, the devices they use to watch it become the go to platform. More eyes on small handheld screens means less eyes on big screens, with silver screen films often becoming the next physical release. When you look at the cost of physical media, the growth of streaming services, the rise of piracy, the boom and bust of theater films, and the changing habits of culture at large, the picture gets closer as to where things are going. But before we go into the predictions of the future, I want to provide some context behind the importance of physical media, because there are valid reasons as to why we need physical media in the long term. Most importantly is picture and audio quality. Blu-ray at 1080p often provides better picture quality and color than 4K streaming. This is due to streaming services utilizing image compression to send their videos to your device, diminishing picture quality in the process. And that's assuming your internet connection can support the speeds needed for 4K streaming. On the audio quality side of things get even worse for streaming, primarily because Blu-ray typically offers lossless audio. If you compare an audio CD to an MP3, you know audio CDs offer better quality, which is due to MP3s using compression, just like the video streaming side of things. If you've ever streamed movies in front of a decent 4K TV with surround sound, I'm sure you've experienced issues ranging from banding to color shifts to resolution drops and even complete interruptions of your video. These simple facts illustrate an important quality gap between streaming services and physical media. At least if your internet goes down, the disc keeps playing. Another important detail for those of us in the US is that owning a physical copy allows you to legally rip and retain a digital copy for your own personal library. And since physical media deteriorates, digital backups are critical to the preservation of cinema's history. Streaming services are under no obligation to keep your favorite movies online, even if you pay for them individually. Some fun facts to consider. In 2018, Apple removed purchase content from customer libraries. Following Redbox's closure in 2024, customers that purchased digital movies saw their entire library wiped clean without any warning. On the subscription side of things, Netflix, Max, Hulu, and Disney have all removed portions of their content library, and that's just naming a few of the big players. With streaming services, you have no guarantee that your favorite show will be there tomorrow. You might even lose permanent access to content you've outright purchased. Physical media solves this problem. Owning a disc is not the same as possessing a digital license, and streaming services require new money to keep their servers going. When the flow of money slows down, services either scale back their library or shut down completely. Some speculate Hulu might eventually be absorbed into Disney Plus, just as Disney did with Star Plus, a Latin American version of Hulu. And Roku may be looking to purchase Stars and make their content part of their library. Also, does anyone remember Showtime, Boomerang, or Ultraviolet? But perhaps most importantly, physical media provides long-term access to a wider audience, allowing organizations like libraries to carry movies alongside books, which you can access for free. One great example of how important this is can be found at your local library, where they carry movies for you to check out. Some libraries even regularly maintain a foreign film section, which is a great way for us to discover new perspectives and ideas from unique cultures, as films are very much a way for us to relate to others outside of our bubble. There's a reason why we love libraries, and movies should be another part of this. And as video rental stores have decreased, libraries have stepped in as a great solution. Losing physical media means there's a chance we can lose certain films forever. After all, if a movie bombs on streaming services and gets removed, where's the opportunity for the film to find a wider audience or even its place in history? This brings me to my final area of discussion. What does the future of physical media look like? Let's start with some good news. In February 2024, Disney announced that they had made an agreement with Sony to conduct their physical media releases, which is huge news for those wondering if Disney would eventually cease releasing physical media altogether. This fact is especially interesting since Sony developed Blu-ray, owns several movie studios, and PlayStation. Sony clearly has an incentive to keep the Blu-ray format alive. But as the habits of cinema fans continues to change, things become a bit difficult to predict. The largest impacts right now to physical media are consumer convenience, the lack of studios fostering interest in physical media, the endless rise of piracy, and the cost of maintaining a movie collection. Buying a 4K Blu ray player, 4K TV, and surround sound is expensive. It's safe to say that physical collections are an expensive, inconvenient hobby, and that's before you even get into something like a Plex server. When assessing the future of movies, there are some parallels we can apply from the music industry. For example, you have the rise of movies over music versus the rise of video games over movies. You also have the rise of piracy impacting consumer behavior and ultimately a decline in sales. You have digital formats replacing physical media as the primary platform of choice, which is eerily similar to streaming services replacing DVDs and Blu rays today. For me, I see movies becoming a market similar to that of vinyl record collection, where there will always be an avid fan base, but it will likely become niche oriented, primarily around big theater blockbusters and special collector's editions that appeal to fans. In a surprise twist for digital only releases, 2023 saw Predator Offshoot Prey receive a Blu ray release. Despite being slated as a streaming only movie, I can't overstate how rare this is. Time will tell if Prey's eventual Blu ray release will become the new standard for physical media releases for streaming first launches. For films that don't receive a physical release, I suspect the bootleg market will play a large part. As a disclaimer, we don't approve of any illegal activities, yet, despite the illegalities, there are many stores offering streaming only content, complete with subtitles and special features. And similar to certain video games that disappear from stores, piracy is quickly becoming a way for lost films to find new life. Some analysts even consider piracy to be beneficial to smaller releases, generating more revenue for them in the long term. I don't know how valid this statement is, but given the strength of small studios such as A24, this would be interesting to see be proven. A24 utilizes little to no paid marketing for their films and rely heavily on word of mouth to generate interest. As of this video, A24 has done a great job at getting audiences interested in purchasing their films. Everything Everywhere All at Once and Talk to Me did extremely well given their modest budgets and minimal advertising, which is great to see. Different from the past, though, is the new issue where many Blu ray and 4K Blu ray releases are receiving subpar or questionable mastering. For example, Dog Soldiers on DVD has superior picture quality over the Blu ray release, which is due to poor mastering. And despite the premium price tag for a 4K Blu ray, the notorious Terminator 2 saw some interesting choices in its mastering that many customers are not happy about. There's also the concern of censorship based on the release version and country you're located in. There's a new perception that modern releases can be unfaithful to the original version or receive a poor translation to modern formats. When it comes to what will follow 4K Blu ray, there are rumors of an 8K or even 16K Blu ray format, but this is purely rumor and I'm honestly skeptical. When you look at the sales of 4K TVs, they account for 40% to 70% of TV sales, with 1080p ranging from 10% up to 50%. 8K TVs are barely reaching the sales between 10 and 20%. Given these numbers, jumping up to 8K or 16K Blu ray just doesn't make sense. Anything beyond 4K Blu ray would split the market further, deteriorate overall physical media sales, and we're barely seeing proper 4K masters of our favorite films. As a side note, most people can't even tell the difference between 4K and 8K picture. In truth, if we want to continue seeing physical releases, we have to keep buying them. As long as there's a market for physical media, the disc presses will keep running. Based on history, though, it seems the future will offer a limited form in comparison to the past. Unfortunately, I also suspect we'll see limited releases snatched up by scalpers capitalizing on rare prints of great movies, something we already see with concert tickets and newly launched video game consoles. But this expectation is based on studios staying the current course. If they were to change things up, generate interest in physical media, such as collectibles, bring the prices down, and make them more accessible, things can easily turn around, and a new generation will find themselves deeply interested in the format. Despite how grim this may all sound, in July 2024, the boss of HMV, a retail chain, did state that DVD and Blu ray sales were quote unquote back in growth. News which does come at a time when streaming services continue to increase their monthly rates. It's possible the restrictive nature of streaming services is playing a role in this new shift, as streaming customers are expressing issues with constant price hikes, the inability to share passwords, certain movies being blacked out in their region, and how their favorite movie or show is simply canceled or removed. Perhaps this is why Tubi continues to see such massive growth as an ad supported streaming service. In time, we'll discover if these predictions are remotely close to accurate. But I'm curious to hear what you think. Are you happy about the state of physical media? Do you prefer physical media, or are streaming services your go to option? And what are you experiencing in your local area? I live in Dallas, and I'm fortunate enough to have a chain of stores called Movie Trading Company, which is a stark contrast to my time in San Diego, which was almost completely limited to thrift stores. I'm curious to hear what you're experiencing, so please let me know in the comments. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider giving me a like and subscribe. I don't pump out much content, but I always emphasize quality over quantity. Thank you for the time, cinema fans. Wishing you nothing less than the best.